yeah, what I'll do is I'll give this a play. We can see what progress they've made. The only thing I have changed in the meantime, literally in like the last 15 minutes, was that, so last stream on Tuesday, or on Monday, sorry, we did the screen space matching on top of our blocking plus for the part where she's going through the swinging. However, I hadn't matched the rope, and so every time she would shift to match the screen space, then her hands would come off the rope. So for the last 15 minutes, I just went through the tedious task of matching the rope to her hands, just so that it didn't look too jarring. But yeah, what I'll do is I'll give a play to the progress we made last stream, and then I'll go through what I think we can achieve today. And you'll notice that there was no jarring glitches in the rope itself. So I've gone through and I've fixed that stuff. But what we're going to be doing today is the next section. So from here, what happens is she begins to drop down and she lands on this window. And the window is going to slightly swing open. She's going to be attached to it. Right now, it's just a pose, so I'm going to have to probably constrain that and then bake it through, possibly, just to make things easier. And then we're going to come down here. We can try jumping on this and then getting maybe to this hang time, possibly. We'll see. I want to see how many frames that is, because I'm kind of getting a good gauge for... Now that I've done a few streams of Blocking Plus, I'm getting a good feel for how long Blocking Plus actually takes me with this shot. So if we go by what we did last stream, which I believe we said was around, I think it was 5 seconds. I can actually tell you how much it was because I can remember where we started and where we left off and how long it took. So let's have a quick look there. So we got to here. So it was for, let's just do some quick math because I can't be asked to do math. So we did 87 frames last stream, and that took, actually can't remember how long it took us. I can tell you how long it took us, just give me 2 seconds. That took us 3 hours, just over. Of course, we're answering questions during that period of time. So, you know, we're talking, if that's approximately, how many frames is that? About 3? I mean, it was a technical part of the shot. I reckon the next parts probably won't take as long. But just hypothetically, say we did go from here and we added like another 80 frames or so, then we're looking in the 640 range, which would put us to that key here. So let's do that as a starting base. I think we can actually probably get more done than that, possibly. And if we do get further, maybe we can do up to this key here, which would be around 670. So that gives us around 100 frames. So that would be 4 seconds. Yeah, we'll see how far we can get through. And yeah, it's literally going to be case by case. But there's been a lot of questions recently on socials and yeah, just people watching the stream asking my process and why I do everything in passes versus also why do I not go through one section, refine that all the way to the end, and then go on to the next section. And then also like working in segments. First of all, working in segments because it's a really long shot, and trying to do the whole thing all at once would just take way too long. But even if it was a shorter task, I would still work in like 20 frame segments, even on a shorter shot. Just so that you can begin to refine that stuff layer by layer. But also when you're working in passes, it allows you to see the thing as like in a big picture. So you're not getting too bogged down with details and refining something before it doesn't work. Or rather before it's ready. because what can often happen is you start refining one thing, and then if you move on to the next thing and start fleshing that out, you realize things that you just refined are no longer working because it's got to transition somehow to the next thing. So it's good to kind of see the whole thing work as a collective and then chip into it, and then like you still work in sections, but you do the passes like pass by pass. At least that's how I think it works. It's just for me, like, it's more manageable. From here we can begin to start to flesh this stuff out. Now there is actually a little bit of time in here before she moves into the jump on this accent. Now I want to see what I want to do here. I like the dung dung because we have like the feet landing here, and then there's another one here where the hands come down, so you get this 1-2 kind of action that's happening. So I definitely want to preserve these two keys. And then this like bass beat here is where the foot lands, so that timing works. And then right now we have the accents where you hear the beat come in again. Happens directly as she leaves, so it's quite abrupt. And that was intentional, because it makes her feel more calculated and aggressive. Now I could... I think I also... Part of my concern is I don't want her to always be in these hang times, like jump, hang, drop, jump, hang, drop. Like, as it becomes a bit repetitive. So in this way, it felt like she was a little bit more, like, direct, and it just gave it a bit more variety and contrast. So the intention is there. It might just mean that I could potentially get a very small anticipation in this period of time before she jumps out. That's one thing I could do. But I'd want it to be very small because there's very distinct beats, and I don't want to take away from those by adding extra beats. There could be a small beat in here where she looks down, so it's like a dung dung dung. So like there's a beat where her head just looks to where she's going. So it could be around here. We're on the odds right now. So even here, it could be that her head just drops down so she looks where she's going. It's a very isolated action. So if I just key all of that, then I can ease out. Then you just have that one beat of her head dropping down. Getting a little bit more of an ease out there. And then I'll add another key. Maybe I can then ease in slightly on the head just to get a little bit softer in there. I'm now thinking actually this head could come in earlier. Just like this, just to break up the beat. And then there'll be an antic on this pose, on this key here. And then it goes on to the twos again. So I'm going to create a little anticipation here. I'm going to keep... Whoa, okay, those legs definitely need to stay back. Hello? Legs? Oh, there's some weird gimbling. That's fine, I'll keep the legs back. Like this. So she's coming... I need to slightly shift her roots back. And then she can lead through with her chest a little bit more. And her neck. And then her head will continue to lead. Just so we get a little bit of that variety in there. And I might be able to just slightly settle this hand up. And then this hand, Oh, interesting. We actually do have a lead on that screen right on her right hand here. So we can get a bit of drag coming through. Now, do I break the bone again like this? Coming around. And then put her right hand in a different pose like this. So she's coming through, then it's coming through here. And again, we can add some speed lines, etc. I see where I'm going with this, but some of this clarity could be a little bit more cleaned up. So this leg here, we could probably make it a little higher. And point the toe. Just so we get a bit more space for that arm to come through. So this arm here, as it's pushing away and folding, it'd be nice to get a little bit more of the hand peeling back where it's coming from. And then this is on 2s. I don't know if I need this to be on 1s. It's a lot of spacing, so it might be worth putting it on 1s. So I'm going to try easing out. Yeah, this is where the foot's going to break, but that's fine. It's just where it's switching over. So everything can switch at this point. Now again, I need to preserve my clarity, so I'm going to bring that leg... I'm actually going to keep it back for a bit longer. Just so we can see where we're coming from as we peel off. And then her hand actually needs to remain where it was. So that's her left hand. Needs to stay in IK like that, which I think is working. And then this is where her right arm is passing through. So at this point, we can actually begin to lead the arm around a bit more. Just trying to get that rhythm working a bit better. The flow of the pose. Just so we read the lead on the hands, then the rest of the body comes through, so that works a bit better. So, yeah, as we're coming through, we've got this beat here. Now, she is dropping quite slowly compared to how much she takes it off here. Which makes me wonder if this needs to land earlier. This is the part that's tricky, because there's too many in-betweens in here. 1, 2. I reckon I could push this back earlier. Here. There's a 2 here, so this key needs to be here. So then we've got the in-between. And then I do wonder if maybe this is the key. Yeah, so this key is going to have to land earlier. And then this one here is where it lands. I know we were saying earlier, I'm just contradicting myself now. Because earlier I was saying, oh yeah, how I'll keep these keys in their places. But I'm seeing if I can rework the timing of her, like the spacing and her weight, but still align with some of the beats in the song. So far, the longest we've ever held for on one key is 3 frames. So right now it's a mix of 1, 2s, and 3s. I don't think there's ever going to be a moment where I put it on any more than that. It'd have to be really subtle, where there's not really much happening. But it's nice to have a little bit of those nuances and fidelity in there, which I think if you go any more than 3, sometimes can look a bit jarring, where it feels like it's holding for too long. But it can work, but it has to be so subtle, like barely anything is happening for it to be on fours. That's at least my normal take timeline. But you can see through here, you can see where I'm playing around with some of the timing. As we're coming through here, the timing's changed in the shots, but the mechanic is very similar. The way she kind of twists out and then grabs and then drops down. So that definitely helps inform the mechanics, and it was more some of the general like rotation of the body and like the lines of action are kind of being inspired by the reference, but then there are other sections of it like this I've just made up. There might be earlier sections of the shot as well. So like for instance here, when she's putting her feet on the bar, that's inspired in this as well. So some of the posing was definitely inspired, but then as to like how we've treated timing and spacing, we've kind of then took it down our own path. But yeah, I think it's a nice like hybrid way of working, if you will. But that's really all I'm doing at this point. So everything beyond that, I'm just going by, you know, animation intuition, I suppose. This shot comes from the rhythm, and the rhythm is just being determined by the music, you know. So it's an interesting one, which I haven't normally, like, this is a process I haven't really done before. So yeah, it's been an interesting one to figure out. So I have actually literally just animated the geometry of this window, and I changed the pivot point. So as it lands here, gotta find the keys now. It was that one there. Oh, strange. Why is it not moving the keys? That is strange. Why are you not moving my keys? Are they locked? Am I in a layer? For some reason... Oh, I know what's happened. So this geometry was actually part of a reference because I brought everything and exported it into different segments. So what I can actually do is, for the time being, I'm going to duplicate this geo, and then I'm just going to go onto the other one. And we're just going to break all the connections in the animation. I don't think I can delete it, you know. Ah, that's going to be annoying. Because at this point, I don't really want to... I'm just going to hide it in a layer. Then I can animate this again. That's just a little bit annoying because there's going to be two windows technically. But in here, at this point, I just want to have this against her foot. And the thing is, I'll probably end up set dressing this slightly differently later. So I'll open it like this. And then here, she hits it open. And then here is where she lands onto it. And then you got this key here, so that's going to continue to rotate around. Is there any other keys in here? Yes. And then she drops. So I've got these keys to work with in terms of where she lands. And then I can figure out the in-betweens from there. So she's coming through. And then we have an ease out here. Now again, I'll probably need to play with some of the spacing. I get an impression because it might not work. Or maybe it's okay. Get a little bit of an arc coming through. I mean, it's already kind of got the arc that we need. By the way, Silas, I really liked your personal stuff that you were doing. There's some really nice stuff in there. Got to mention that a second ago. But yeah, I've been following your animations as well. So I'm just going to tuck her legs in here so that we preserve the next key. So again, this is kind of like the anime style, if you will, where you favor the poses. Now, I don't like some of the complexity that I'm seeing in here, so I'm going to try and simplify some of these graphic shapes a little bit more. Just keep them aligned. At this point, I'm wondering if it's even worth just hiding one foot entirely, because then it's going to come around and drop anyway. It's more just to keep it simple. Now, there is a cheat going on here as well, because now you can see that the arm has gone from between her legs to going outside her legs. But again, some of these things you can take creative liberties with, and it just kind of works. So like, if you don't, as long as it's not jarring to watch, then I think you can get away with it. I'm just trying to simplify some of these lines of action. So we're coming through, we're hitting this key here, which is then knocking the door. And then she's going to come through. I actually wonder if I can slightly delay this. I might be able to put it on 2s, that earlier section, so it wasn't on 1s. In here. So this is on... Yeah, we ease out, hold for 2, this is on 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, and then here is on the 1, so you feel the weight go down on the beat a little bit more, so it's a little harsher. And then she'll follow through from there. So I think the best thing to do at this point is I can actually just have I can actually just look at what the spline is doing on this window just to see what's actually happening, and I can already see that this could be tighter just to clean up that path. So what I can do is I'm just going to tighten the spacing, and then I'm going to insert some keys. So it's going to have the 1s, and then again I'll play with the frame rates if I need to, but for now I'm just going to put this on 2s. And then I'll put that back into steps, and then at least I have the door swinging into position. And then I can just, you know, once I've locked down her what the rest of her animation does, I can begin to add the arcs and everything over the top, and like lock in the constraint on the hand, etc. So it's just temporary, but yeah, there's different methods and different like mindsets you can use when you go through this step, like a step like this. But I'm just going to kind of go by what I'm doing. So I'm going to ease in from this point because this is the breakdown. So now we're coming through, and I want to get a very distinct lead on what the arm is doing. Like we're dropping down with the root, so the root needs to continue to drop in here. Again, I'll fix the legs later. I just want to get the main inertia working. So I still want to continue. Even at this stage, I might slightly drag for longer. Then we see the root drop. Then as we're coming through here, we can continue to drag, and then we get the rotation on the root follow through, which will then cause the chest to follow through, and etc, etc. So I'm going to begin to ease in now. Again, I'm trying to keep the frame rate similar to what we'd already established with the door. So now we're getting a bit of follow through happen on the root. And then we ease in. I don't want there to be loads of time in the overshoots and the follow through, but just enough. Then we're going to get a little bit of a follow through in the chest. And then again, ease in. And now that should all begin to rise back up slightly, but then I can follow through a little bit on the head. I want her to feel controlled, so I don't want to add too much follow through on everything, because then it'll feel too loose, but just enough and then to give it a bit of weight. And so, again, sometimes you just have to play it back to see if it actually works. Sometimes it doesn't work the way you intend it to. And then I did want to get a little bit more follow through on her arm here. So at this point here, we're dragging the arm. Let's keep that dragging so we push that line of action a bit more. Then we're coming through. Now, this is the tricky part. As we come around, I want to feel the follow through happen more at the end, so we feel the curl of the arm. So I don't want to drag too much, like through the... If I drag the arm here, like this, then you'll get follow through later, but then it will overshoot and have to settle back. And I don't know if I want that. I want to almost continue to drag for longer in the straight. So in other words, we can twist the hand this way. So we're coming around now. We can drag the wrist. Cheers for the sub, guys. And now we're beginning to follow through. Now I'm going to overshoot the arm just a little bit, and then that can begin to settle back. But the main follow through is going to happen from the forearm. So we're dragging behind, and then here we can really read the follow through. And then I just may need to twist the rotation X a bit more through here. Just so you get a very clear read on that hand. Now, she's actually still staying on the door at this point, so there is potential to add an extra beat in here, but it's hard to tell at this stage. I do worry that it's, again, I don't want it to feel too pose to pose all the time. I like having these punchy accents, but I don't want it to be like, I'm going to hold, wait for the song, now the song goes, so then I go again. I want it to kind of still feel a little bit more organic. So I need to play around a little bit with how those transitions work. I think this part, the bum 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 bum, is generally working. So it looks like I actually need to continue to ease into that key. So I need to just double check if I can blend a little bit more into this key at the end here. Because it looks like some of the arcs that the root is taking isn't quite aligning. Thanks for the sub, everyone. So I'm just going to take the translates in the graph editor. The ups and downs I'm not so worried about, but it's mostly the Z and the X. Just so that they're blending into this position here. Now, the feet need to remain attached to the door. So what I can do is, I know at this point here is where I want the feet to finish. So I can constrain the feet to the door or the window at this point, and the hand, and then everything beyond that point I can start to bake through. Then at least I know where they need to be, then I can work my way backwards, where her feet are attached to the door and the hand, right? So basically we need to take these parts and constrain her foot, or her feet rather, and her hand for these parts. Ah, there's already a constraint on the hand here. That's fine. I don't want to make another one just yet then. What I do need to check is the blend parent where it was turned on earlier, which is the beginning of the shot. Before I delete this constraint, I do need to make sure that earlier on where it is constrained, which is looks like it's through this section here, I'm just going to go through and add keys. So on this stuff here, I'm just inserting keys in case, as I've been adding things, it's up until sorry, it's up until where she lets go. For some reason, yeah, ignore the feet. That's because they're constrained to the door right now. I'm just keying all this through, just so I know the coordinates are matching. Yeah, there you go. I can actually see it's already recording information, which tells me that I needed to key it first before I deleted it. So now I can delete that constraint, because I don't want to have multiple constraints throughout the shot constantly. That would just be a nightmare. So now let's go back to where we were, which was around here. So now her feet are attached. Through this part here, you can see they're attached to the door now, as is her hand. Which, oh no, we didn't attach the hand yet. There. So now we can attach the hand. There we go. So it's just through this section. I'm just going to bake the positions through on twos, just so I know we have these positions where they need to be. So now I can delete those keys, or delete the constraints rather, just so that they're baked in to match the door. And I can adapt these after now. You can see they're now sliding into position, so I've just got to match the feet a little closer. It doesn't have to be perfect, they can slot, but just so that they're closer. That seems to be working fine. And then now I just need to focus on her root upwards because her legs are already matching. So I was trying to create a little bit more of an arc. As we begin to ease in. I'm just getting everything to ease into the pose first. It's frozen. It's frozen, guys. I don't like it. Pray to the animation gods. Frozen for a long time too. I don't have the blend parent selected. I'm being nice, I'm not keying them. So everything is now easing into this. I just need to insert one more key without selecting the IKs because they're not constrained right now. Just to ease into the final pose. Then I can clean up the root. I just need to be very conscious every time I use the graph editor, because the way I use the graph editor normally is much more, I guess the spacing is a bit more progressive. So what I mean by that is like the spacing, you kind of feel the ease ins a little bit softer. And obviously this is a very tight style. So whenever I am looking at my spacing in the graph editor, I need to kind of make my keys and my curves a lot tighter than what I'm normally doing. So there'll be a bit of back and forth as I'm cleaning stuff up in the graph editor. I just need to be very conscious of what's happening on screen to make sure that I maintain the intended style. Which is always, that's the kind of challenge when you're doing this like very punchy anime stuff. That's why I'm very curious about other people's workflows when they do these types of shots, because whenever I see stuff on X or whatever, and I'm like, wow, that's a really cool shot, and it'll be like CG animated anime style. Like for instance, there was some really cool stuff on Trigun. If anyone has watched that stuff, I can grab it up quickly. There's some really cool sequences in that which are CG and very dynamic, but it makes me wonder, do they just key it straight ahead, or are they utilizing CG workflows in a more a more contemporary way, I suppose. Anyway, it's from that is what I was referring to, that has this like, it makes me curious what kind of workflows the animators use. So yeah, now that I've got these keys, I can see where I need to aim toward. So I'm going to just look in the graph editor, and I just want to clean up some of this stuff. So I know where it ends up finishing. And this is her left and right. Yeah. So we're overshooting a little bit here to the right. And then it's settling back to the left, which I think is fine. It's mostly the Z, I think. I just want to make sure that's clean, which it currently is. Maybe it could be a little tighter. And then I've now just got to clean up the ups and downs, because I believe that is broken right now. She's dropping down. I'm actually going to have her overshoot just a little bit longer, so she drops, holds, and then she begins to settle back up. But again, I'm going to try and keep it quite tight. There you go. It feels pretty tight. I might make it a little softer. Just to give it a little bit more weight. There we go. Something like this. And then from here I can layer in the overlap and follow through. So as she drops down here, I might have her slightly follow through for a little bit longer before she then settles back up. And then I'll do the same for her chest. So she has the overshoot here. And then it's going to ease out and settle up. There you go, we just get a little bit of that overlap and follow through there now. And then I'm keeping her head quite locked in place. Now I just need to refine her, because the other arm and legs are just doing their constraints, so I don't need to track those. But I do need to track her arm. Again, now that I just have a few more keys. Yeah, this needs to overshoot a little bit more. And then with this hand, we're overshooting, holding the overshoot, and then you can begin to settle out. Not as much as I have though. Something like that. So we're keeping it relatively isolated, but just enough to break it up. The only time I actually have used Blender was for a class. There was like I was representing the studio I was working for at a time many years ago, and there was a bunch of students who were using Blender for their short films, and I came in and basically I was just there to give them critique. And at one point I was asking one of them to change a camera, and it was a very simple thing, but it was like just crash zooming in a lot punchier. Right now, like the camera was kind of drifting in, and again, these are very early students, so like they're still learning a lot of the basics. And so I was like, just make this nice and like punchy. And they're like, oh, okay, could you show me how to do that? And I'm like, okay. So I start just trying to use it like Maya would, and it just did not go well. And it made me look really incompetent because I'm there trying to give them critique, and you know, how can you critique someone if you can't even do it yourself? But there's me being like, I'm sorry, I'm not used to this program, I've never used it before. But it's definitely, I mean, it's long overdue that I learned the program, so it is next on my list once this is done. And by this I mean animation on this project. I'll start to move into Blender from there. So now we're beginning to drop down. I want to have a little antic in here. Again, I want to make sure that we define our beats very clearly so that we're not adding too much movement. Because if we add too much movement, then it starts to take away from where those beats occur. So we have to be very careful where we place our keys and how much range we use within them so that we still have the contrast on the accent. There we go. So you can see the new style reference stuff now. There's some really cool like texture reference in some of this stuff. Like how they're using the highlights on some of the neon stuff, like the texturing in the steel work and the concrete. So a lot of like the texture, the brush style, if you will, is something that I want to take inspiration from, and like even having like these wires and like some of this scaffolding. I've already got some scaffolding geometry that I'm going to use and populate the shot with. Like some of this stuff here, you can see like these brush strokes that are just lines, but I have stuff that I can use as image planes to like scatter around the shot and make interesting compositions. And then there's a specific, it's actually quite close to what we're about to animate. So you saw the part after she drops down from the building we're currently animating. She jumps onto some chairs and then like leaps over a fence. But in the background of that, I wanted to populate it with like a market. I'm not necessarily suggesting that I'm going to have this many people in it, of course. I'm not crazy. But I do want to have this like these rundown market stalls that have like these metal sheets over the top. A lot of the color theory is actually going to come from Akira rather than Ghost in the Shell, but like the actual architecture and the texture style is going to be quite reminiscent of Ghost in the Shell. So like this kind of stuff in the back. And then like all these very faded gradients in like the background buildings, and like getting all the nice grain in there as well would be really nice. And like even the texturing style of the trees, there's going to be some trees in there as well, so this is going to be interesting to try and achieve this style. But yeah, I really like some of the steel work. So like there are going to be some parts of the environment where we're going to see some of the like industrial objects close up, so I definitely want to get some of that detail into some of this stuff. Some more signs and lights. And then this is a good reference of like seeing the cell shaded on top of the backgrounded details. So this is like the intention. Anything that's moving is going to have this cell shaded look with the line work, and then everything in the back is going to be less line work based and more texture based. You see again some of the cell shaded stuff on the left there. Again, more cell shaded combined with the texture in the back. But it does tie in quite nicely. So yeah, that's the intention. So now we've got our E's out, Maya finally decided to behave itself. So I want to get a little antic on the root. And then we're going to counter the chest just a little bit. We're dropping down. And then the feet are going to begin to lead down. I think we can push some of these shapes a little bit more. And we can get a bit more drag on the chest here. This shape is a little bit broken. That already looks much better. And then we probably want a bit more of an open hand pose on her right hand here. so we're coming through. That left leg needs to lead the action. The right one we can keep tucked in. And then we're beginning to drop down. I think this needs to be on the 1. Yeah. Now I'm going to create another ease out in here. Again, let's see how my rig likes. It's really not liking me using Tween Machine anymore. I'm really curious why. I don't have anything selected in the graph editor, because sometimes if you highlight in the graph editor and then use Tween Machine using Animbot, then it will do all of that. There was like a certain process that I went through when it came to lighting and texturing. It's different style to this, but I'm considering what technique I use to go through the next part of the process. So if I find it here we go. So my first part of the process that I did was my very first screenshots was this, which is I took a screenshot of each still in the composition, and then I was going to use this as a base at certain beats of the shot to create a paint over of the scene as how I intended to light and render it. So these are all the different stills I made, and then they're just core Maya viewport, and then I painted over in Photoshop my lighting keys. So this was just the value so that I could guide the eye to certain compositions. So there were certain focal points that we were looking at. And then this is like the pop art version, which I would color in later. And then I had this very clear spotlight that hung over him at the end. And then, was that the final version? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And then from there, then I colored it. So then I went over the top in a, like just with an overlay, and then just layered in the color over the top. But then at least the focal points in the lighting were there, so that you could read his color very clearly. Obviously this is very vibrant, but this is based on the color schemes from the first Spider-Verse film. So yeah, this was the base in which I created the color script, and you can probably see a side by side with with the final version. You can actually see if it works. Where's the finals? Here we go. You'll probably be able to see a side by side as to how close I ended up matching it versus the lighting script. Like this is this beat here, which looks pretty similar, right? Like I was color picking a lot of these values. I added a bit more contrast in comp. But then like if I scroll down to here, for instance, let's see if I ended up matching it. So it's pretty close, right? I mean, it's not exact. In some ways, I actually prefer my paint over. But, and like, especially when we get to this part here, I mean, this is very purple. But when we get to like here, for instance, they're fairly similar. You can definitely see the CG coming through in this final version. But the point is, giving this as a base kind of helps me keep everything consistent in terms of like the lighting keys. So I'm curious with this style as well, if I'm now going to the CYBERPHONK and I'm looking at my color scripts, I need to go through again and like pick out specific keyframes, but there are some that definitely came to mind in terms of color theory. So if I find those quickly, where are you? It's not movie references. Style reference. So for instance, like this stuff here. It's like some of these color palettes I definitely want to reference. I quite like the backdrops. There's still some of these textures are like reminiscent of Ghost in the Shell as well. I like some of like how the lighting is responding with the backgrounds. What else have we got? This one's interesting. I think it's a bit too far for what I'm looking for. There was one specific shot that I remember really liking that I thought would be perfect. I'm just going to scrub through some of these references. Like, this stuff is really good for like character reference in terms of line work. There's one specific shot here, so I really like the contrast between like these really hot warm colors and like the cold ones on the sides, and I want to have that for the beats where she's fighting the robot. So there's a specific beat that happens later where, as we're going through, I'll probably quickly find it in here. There's a specific beat where she goes down and she's now under. See how we climb over the fence and then we go under into this like industrial railing section. So I want to have these lots of like hot colors on the top and then like going down to the cold. So this is where she fights, or it could be the opposite way around. Maybe it's cold on the top and then like all the red is down the bottom where the robots are. So then when we start fighting, there's a lot of red coming through. And then she goes into something cooler again. Like that kind of idea, I think could be really interesting. So there's lots of things to play around with as we begin to go through. So as we're coming up here, I still want to get that lead on the chest. And then here we can get a little bit of follow through, so that we get that nice lead and that contrast. Now I could bring this foot around earlier, but then keep this one stuck, so we get a little bit of that wrap, the wrap around leading on this leg. Potentially, I don't want to deviate too far. Even something like this could be interesting, just enough to get a bit of a lead. And then we're dropping down on the one. Then we're going to come through into this landing. That's definitely too fast, so that can go on the 2. So I definitely want to hit this accent where she kicks out here. So I'm going to ease in on this frame. It might mean that we go on 1s, or maybe we delay by a frame. We'll see how that works, but it'd be nice to get a nice kick again coming through on that accent with the kunk. I mean, it's also within the drop itself, the like the beat. For some reason, my animbot is really slowing down now. I was in TV animation for a long time, maybe about 4 going on 5 years. Then I slowly transitioned to feature films. And then I did a little bit of games, and now I'm kind of in the hybrid where I'm technically working for games, but in a more cinematic approach rather than like the gameplay itself. Now we're dropping down here. I'm going to delay her leg so it stays up into her body, so then we feel the accent hit when the leg kicks out. So I really want to tuck that leg in. Then you get that bonk there. Now it does mean I may need to clear some space a little bit for the other leg. It might just mean that this foot needs to be rotated slightly. I mean, even this looks kind of interesting as a pose anyway. I might just cheat her knee so it's not so tucked in. Something like this just looks a little bit more dynamic. And then we were dragging here, so what I could do is I can compress her chest, but then drag her root back. just so we get a little bit of that lead coming through on her chest. So coming through, this arm can begin to drag. So doing a little bit of straight ahead here. I never work straight ahead in terms of like entire poses, or I rarely do. It's mostly like overlap and follow through and secondary actions is where most of my yeah, most of the straight ahead side comes in. So we're getting a little bit of a bend backwards here. Just nudge the neck a little bit further out of the way. I do wonder if I keep that leg up a little higher. Complement the flow of the pose a bit more. Then we get the accent of the leg coming through, as we do the foot, to be fair. So in here, I'm actually going to continue to ease in on the 1. So this is the 2. The next key that we just made was the 1. So that we feel the accent of the foot kick out. I'm just tucking her foot in here. Might cheat the foot a bit higher just so we can read it. A little bit more. Now this arm, I'm going to drag back. That hand needs to be here. For some reason, why is that there? Strange. I'm just gonna have her arm reach down, so it's actually going to be a bit more direct as she holds onto the like she grabs the floor. So by this point here, she's already holding on. Because I want that foot beat to read clearer. So I almost want all of this to snap into place. Like this. As for what this arm, the other arm does, I'm going to figure it out after I've got this main beat working. Yeah, that's going to happen earlier. So that means we're going to have more on 1s, unfortunately. Or we don't hold for as long. That's the alternative. So I could take, for instance... trying to find the key. So probably this key here we can remove. Bring this earlier. That already works. There you go. Now you get the beat happening on the kick. But then she hops from this. There's a breakdown in here. So I need to see how many frames there are in between first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this could be on evens. I could put this on 2s. Or I could do variables. So then, again, whenever there's an even, we could go into the odds, but it means you'd have to go, instead of being like 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, you'd have to go 0, 1, 4, 7, 8. Does that make sense? So you have, instead of going 2, 2, 2, 2, you could go 1, 3, 3, 1. So it's the same amount of time, but the frame rate's a variable. But I'll try on 2s, and then if it doesn't work, then we can try doing the second option. And again, you don't have to follow that pattern. The only reason I use that pattern is it means that you have a part that's faster and a part that suspends in the air, and then you go back into the fast. So it kind of emulates the idea of spacing. You're trying to match your whatever you do with your timing, you want to kind of compensate also with your spacing. So when you kind of match the concept of when you're easing in, you slow down, and when you're in the breakdown, you speed up in time, it kind of synergizes well. So that's kind of the theory. So we got this breakdown here where she does jump in the air. So I want it to go back up a little higher. And I definitely want her to be rotating a little bit more and twisting early. So this is less about what her head and her chest is doing, and it's more in the legs. I'm definitely going to ease in this leg. So it holds up. And then I think this leg also needs to tuck in. Now, do I tuck in completely? Possibly. So that way you read the leg sticking in and out. It might be a bit like in and out on the legs, so I'll play around with it. Possibly. Yeah, maybe something like this, just so we read a little bit of an arc. And then we can keep... So this arm here, we can begin to drop. And then it's swinging around. Like this, we get a bit of that follow through. This arm needs to stay straight, but it is releasing. So it's like this, which makes sense. Then we've got to add the in-betweens. So this is where we need to have the push-off key in here. So we're going to ease out. We may need some ones in here, but we'll see. Because a lot of the assets I have found that I feel like would work for this shot are actually in Blender, which means that maybe I'll be forced to learn some Blender animation, who knows. But either way, it's going to be relatively simple in those characters, so it might be a good way to, like, you know, introduce me a little bit more to how to animate them, how to animate the program. So we kick through here, we're easing. Now, do I ease out here? No, I want to ease in. This should be a breakdown where we're pushing off. Alternatively, we kick, we hold for longer in the down, we twist the foot in, trying to preserve this line of action as much as we can, and then we go on the 1 to the push off here. That might be the way to do it. So this stays out, we keep kicking this leg out here. We're twisting through. So maybe the arm can already begin to wrap around here. Then we're coming up. And then on the 1 here, we'll see how this looks. So now we're pushing up and hanging in the air for a little bit longer. Now in here, I definitely want to keep her right leg in IK as she pushes off. Now it might mean that we need to add the foot roll in here. to tie her leg in. There you go. Now the other leg, however, I want to tuck in because we've already read the beat of it kicking out. So here, that definitely needs to tuck into the body. Just trying to keep consideration of my silhouettes. The other arm, I have technically held for longer, but I do wonder, do I hold it there or should I actually just have it disappear? I kind of do like the idea of it holding there, but I worry about clarity because this just reads better without seeing the arm there. So it might be worth just having at this point the arm already switched like this. Clarity first and foremost over anything else. So I'm now just looking at, again, the elbow. Do I need to read the elbow coming through? Probably not. It does, well, actually, saying that, it does kind of just vanish. Maybe it's worth just for the transition to get a little bit of the arm in here. It's funny when I'm playing through stuff and then I'm starting to... I personally find it fun when I end up contradicting myself sometimes. Or I'm like, oh yeah, let's do this. Oh wait, actually no, that doesn't work. There you go, that feels a little bit better. My only thing in here is that head needs to tuck in and turn more. I don't want to pay as much attention to the head because it vanishes again. So in here, let's tuck the head under. Bring the arm around. Just, yeah, that helps with clarity again. So that pops up. And then we're hanging into this. This is on the 2, so we're going to ease out. That, and also there might be something like some awkward response I've given where I've been like half in train of thought and I've said something that just doesn't either just doesn't make sense, or, you know, me saying hi to you guys in the chat doesn't always necessarily need to be in the video. Like, it's not, I do it for you guys on stream, of course, I want to say hello to you all, but it's just not necessary to see on YouTube because that's not what the people who haven't tuned into the stream are there for. So I'm going to ease out that leg a little later so that we get, again, that nice punctuation. On spacing. Ah, this is interesting. There's a big hang time in here. This is gonna have to come earlier, I reckon. Originally, I had it dun dun dun. Here, where is it? Dun, dun, dun. So in here, dun 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 dun. Then it hits. Dun cut. I think what I could do instead is have this faster, because again, this suspended time is cool, but it's too long. So what I could do is take this key here, have that come in earlier so that we hit into this key earlier, and then something can happen in this beat before she then pushes off again. So what I'll do is I'll just add those in-betweens there. I'm going to shift this a bit earlier. reckon I can get one, like, I can put this on the 2. So I'm going to add one in between in here. Expect more people who are able to sustain that type of, like, editing. So there definitely needs to be a breakdown here. We're coming through. There definitely needs to be some kind of twist. That's already starting to feel a bit better. Keeping the leg up. Pointing the leg through. Now that arm, there is a big breakdown there. We've got a big switch up happening. So I've got to make sure that switch works. So I could do something like this. So both arms are pointing in one direction. And then the other one passes through after. Potentially. That could work. And then we're hitting this. I'm going to have to update some of the posing in this. We're coming around. Yeah, probably something along these lines. Still trying to complement lines of action. This is actually quite easy to ease into. We can just, again, it's all in the timing. So we're coming through. Oh no, it's frozen. Don't crash. There you go. So we're coming through. This arm needs to drag for longer. Now I could get a little bit of variety in the timing if this arm actually comes down early. I've just got to play with the chest a little bit more in here. Again, just experimenting. I think that works. I'm actually going to have our momentum go a little bit further over. Oops, I'm selecting two things at once there. And then we can ease in. Now this is where we're going to be in IK. Now I actually don't know if my feet are in IK on this pose, but ideally they need to be. But that's pretty easy to fix if it's in FK. If it's the other way around, it's harder. It looks like it is in IK, I think. Does it switch? Yay, it is in IK. Perfect. So here, we can snap that into position, which means this root can come over. Now this foot here, I'm going to slightly roll so that we get a little bit more. We get a little bit more of a what's the word? A little bit more of an ease into it. And then her right leg here, I'm going to snap it in, but then I'm also, maybe it's in FK. Is it in FK? Oh, it is in FK. Okay, fine. That one It's just going to arc in. I just want to get a little bit of an arc around, so it could maybe the leg could possibly overshoot slightly and then come back in. I'll play around with that, but yeah, this arm here, definitely want to keep overshooting. Because that can come down. Connects the chest a little bit more. And then it can arc back up. Meanwhile, this can continue to drag to the left. And then we're going to ease in again. So I'm using the momentum. Trying to keep her close to the wall. There's going to be a bit of a switch up in here. On the elbow. And then this arm's going to swing around a bit later. So we get those follow-throughs. This leg, I was going to slightly overshoot it just a little bit. Tuck in. So you get this like revolving motion. And then I'm going to continue to ease in. So now we're following through. Gonna overshoot the arms. Get a little bit of twist in there as well. Trying to create a little bit of an arc. Yeah, there's a little kind of sound in there. So I reckon I can hit into this earlier, and then I'm going to add an extra beat in later. Where she does something and hit this beat before she then pushes off here. So, all that being said, guys, I will add that beat in next stream, but we did reach this key here. So what I'm going to do is I'll play blast what we've done today, see if it even works. And then, yeah, hopefully it does, and then we can end it there. Just going, sorry, I need to backtrack some of this stuff. Was my first reel, what was my first reel? A short film that caught the attention of hiring managers to land your position with your first feature. That caught the attention of hiring manager to land your first position feature film. Yeah, that's a good question. I actually do keep my old reels, so I can probably show you what I applied with. My first feature, it's a tricky one because I kind of had a slow transition to feature film, where basically I worked on a How to Train Your Dragon short film, which arguably was a feature film quality, but was for a holiday special, which wasn't a feature film. But then I had that as a base to then move on to the following project with the same company and same client to then do the official feature film. So I can probably find it if I go in my reels. Let's see what reels I have. I have 2019. Oh, here we go, 2018. I'm trying to remember when How to Train Your Dragon was. Maybe it was 2018 because it was around the time COVID started to kick in. Let me just double check. So if I have this stuff, this was created in 2024. That's a lie. When was this? Oh, apparently I've copied some stuff over then. I can probably find out. How to Train Your Dragon. How to Train Your Dragon Homecoming. Just because then I know which reel to look for. That's 2019 is when it came out. So I could probably look at my 2018 reel. I can show you both. I'll show you 2018, 2019, see if there's any significant difference. But this is the film. This would have been the reel that got me onto How to Train Your Dragon Homecoming.
But it never happened. He didn't want to grow up.
Not leaving 20% at breakfast.
Sorry, that's a bit sound.
Push it. Push the bell. Come on. Push it, Nick. Push the bell.
But he didn't stay locked up forever. I kept thinking,
Okay, you've kicked in the doors of the baddest baddies in the big Are you?
And this is a bunch of TV stuff.
Back in a moo! Keep on coming! It's a crash test, Grizzle.
So there's primarily three pieces of content there. There was Happy, which was a TV show for Netflix. Then there was Go Jetters, which was a TV show for BBC. And then there was Digby Dragon, which was a TV show for Nick Jr. So those were the three things that I had worked on prior that got me into Jellyfish to do the How to Train Your Dragon short film. And then from there, they still continue to hire, so they may not have necessarily kept me on. But I have a oh, here we go, Real 2019. I'm going to assume it's this one. This was the one, and again, in the meantime, I had produced my my Spider-Verse project as well. So this was the reel that technically was the work that I had that moved me on to my first feature. Of course, it was Post Malone.
Sonny's not a cockroach. I don't believe it, neither does Haley.
So this is also Happy Season 2 now.
Castle, a friend to you and... Huh? Nick!
Yeah, what is it? Nothing.
I can't help it. I'm all teeth.
Why would the humans need to feed a big glass box full of water?
This is TV
and
stuff.
Where's this fish?
Whoa!
Aha! Ahem. Have you seen a fish anywhere?
How about a courtesy flush?
You're as green as a frog with chlamydia, aren't you?
Who knew so much excitement, so much joy and emotion could be packed into one intense minute? It leads to more decadent confections. And do you really think another bottle of ass whoop is a good idea?
And then back to the shot again. I mean, this is probably the highlight that I did as a junior in season 1. Yeah. So those are the reels that got me the slower transition into feature film. So what I'll do in the meantime, whilst we wait for this to play, we'll give this a play blast, and then yeah, we'll see what we've made today. So we are now on version 43. Yeah. I may need to, yeah. Okay, before we go any further, let me just tweak the camera slightly. Camera needs to follow her. and it's currently losing her a bit too much. So it was around here. Let's insert a key here. Up to this point is fine, but then here, let's remove this, drop this down. It needs to be a bit earlier. I don't mind if we lose her a little bit, but this is getting tight. This works now. I think here we can keep it lower for longer. Still feels like it needs to be lower. And then by here, I think it needs to transition up earlier. Something like this. Okay, let's give that a try. That works. It's quite fast. Especially that drop. Yeah, it's too much. I'll give that a little bit more time later. I quite like this bit. That foot definitely flashes though here. I think that needs to follow through earlier to make it. Might even mean that it doesn't stay, like maybe both legs stay up a little longer here. Yeah, I think I have the time to do that. I'm gonna have to play around with the timing of the, and I think these keys we can stretch them out so they take a little bit longer. So instead of being on 2s, I can put them on 3. Yeah, I think then that will work. So I am running out of time today, so I will address that in the next stream, and I have this recorded, so I'll know to not forget about it. But yeah, hopefully this has been useful for you guys in the meantime. And yeah, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or LinkedIn if you guys have any questions in the meantime for the next stream. Otherwise, do follow me on those platforms because that's where I'll be promoting the next one. So yeah, in the meantime, have a good one, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.